Hi everyone, and welcome to the Fragrant Leaves virtual tea tasting. Today we'll be exploring Taiwan's Dongding Oolong Tea, which is a traditional oolong tea. Taiwan specializes in oolong teas. They make a variety of oolong teas, and oolong tea is the primary type of tea that is grown and consumed in Taiwan. So first of all, what is oolong tea? So oolong teas are semi-oxidized teas. They undergo a partial oxidation after the picking of the leaf. And unlike green teas, which are not oxidized, and black teas, which are completely oxidized, oolong teas have a range of oxidation levels, anywhere from 10 to 15% to 60, 70, 80%. Now the partial oxidation, it modifies the tea leaf and changes the color, the aroma, and the taste. And because you have such a variety of oxidation levels, oolong teas really offer a diverse palette as far as taste and aroma and texture. So it's probably the most complex category of tea that's out there. Now oolong teas have two main types. There's the lightly oxidized oolong tea, which is known as green oolong, and these would be examples of these teas in Taiwan would be the baozhong and the high mountain teas from a variety of areas in Taiwan. There's also the second category, which is a medium to heavy oxidized oolong teas, and these are known as dark oolong teas. Now the Dongding that we'll be tasting today is within this category. And other teas that Taiwan makes that are dark oolongs would be, for example, the Bai Hao, which is known as Oriental Beauty, or the Tie Guanyin, which is the Iron Goddess. Now, Dongding is considered the origin of oolong teas in Taiwan. It's one of the oldest varieties of tea that's been produced there. And the tea plants and the processing techniques for Dongding actually originated in China, in the Fujian province, over 150 years ago. The authentic growing area is Dongding Mountain, which is in central Taiwan in the county, Nantou County, and it's in a particular township known as Lugu, or Deer Valley. So with that introduction, let's go ahead and start to brew some oolong tea, some Dongding tea. And if you have questions as we go along, feel free to post them in the comment section, and I'll leave some time at the end to answer them. Okay, let's take a look at our Dongding. So this is our Dongding, which is a medium oxidized, and it's also a medium roasted tea. You'll notice right off the bat that the leaves are tightly rolled into a ball shape, and this is very characteristic of many oolong teas in Taiwan. The rolling them into a ball helps to preserve the freshness of the tea. It also extends the shelf life, and it also prevents the leaves from crumbling. From a taste standpoint, it also enhances the flavor by ensuring that all the essential oils that are in the leaf are evenly distributed throughout the leaf. Now I mentioned that the Dongding is a roasted tea, and not all oolong teas are roasted. Generally the darker oolongs tend to be roasted, but this roasting step usually happens at the very end. It's a post-processing step, and it lends a little bit more complexity and body to the tea. It also helps to caramelize the natural sugars that are in the tea leaf and imparts a bit more sweetness. So it's roasting is an art in Taiwan, and so many tea masters, will roast their darker oolongs to specific parameters. So let's go ahead and start our tea brewing. We're going to be using the traditional gongfu method of brewing, which is a Chinese style of brewing, using a larger amount of leaf and a smaller amount of water to produce a more concentrated brew. It also allows for multiple steepings. So let me introduce our teaware today. We're going to be using, for our oolong tea, a clay teapot. Now this is my personal teapot. It only holds 4 ounces, but it's from my personal collection that I bought in Taiwan the last time I was there. And I love this pot for brewing oolong teas. You could use a gaiwan, which we have used in the past to brew green teas. And the Gaiwan is a very versatile teapot. You can brew pretty much any kind of tea in it. I like the clay teapot for the oolong because with oolong tea we're brewing with a hotter water temperature, and so the clay teapot retains the heat better. It's also a porous clay. It's made of a porous clay, and that helps to absorb, the teapot will absorb the flavor and the aroma of the tea that you brew in it over time, and that's just really nice to have that extra oomph when you're drinking your tea. We also have our glass decanter, and we'll be using our small teacups. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start by heating up our teaware. Again, just to make sure that the temperature of our teaware is closer to the temperature of the water that we'll be using. And for the Dongding Oolong, I'm going to be brewing it at about a water temperature of about 185 degrees. So oolong teas, you can definitely use hotter water for oolong teas. They benefit from the hotter water. Anywhere between 185 to 205 degrees Fahrenheit should be fine for that. So we'll go ahead and add the tea to the teapot. And I'm adding in here about I'm filling the teapot about a third of the way full with oolong leaves. It's about a tablespoon of tea. So again, we're using a lot more tea to water. Now I'm going to rinse the leaves. Just give them a brief couple of seconds rinse to help open them up, to wake them up so they release their full flavor. And again, because the Dongding is a rolled tea, it's rolled into the shape of a ball, it takes a little time for those leaves to unfurl and release all their flavor. So we'll start our first infusion. And I recommend starting, again with a small teapot, starting about 30 to 40 seconds for your first brew, and then increasing the brewing time by, 10 to 15 seconds for each subsequent brew. So we're using very short infusion times, and this will coax out different nuances of flavor and aroma over the course of the multiple steepings. So unlike the green teas, oolong tea tends to be picked a little bit later in the season. Generally around May is the first picking, and this is because you require a much larger, more mature leaf with oolong tea because it undergoes a lot of processing. And so unlike the green tea where you're picking the early spring leaves, with the oolong you want the more mature leaf. And in Taiwan, they're harvesting the tea usually 4 times a year. I find that the spring and the winter harvests are the best. They're generally a little bit more expensive, but they're the best harvests of the year. So generally May, which is the spring harvest, and then November, which is the winter harvest. Okay. So you can see the nice golden color of the tea. This is our first brew. Very aromatic. I'm picking up some floral notes in the aroma, a little bit of fruitiness and some toastiness as well. So So the first brew tends to be a little bit lighter in flavor. I'm getting some nutty notes in it, a little bit of fruitiness, and definitely some sweetness. If you think roasted sweet potatoes, roasted vegetables, roasted carrots, that's the kind of, you know, sweet taste that I'm getting in that first brew. I'm going to save this first brew for later, so I'm not going to toss that away. I'll go ahead and start a second brew. And again, for this second brew, we'll go ahead and just add maybe another 10 seconds or so to the brewing time. Now generally with this type of gongfu brewing, you can steep up to 5 or 6, maybe even up to 8 infusions of dongding. It's a very long-lasting tea, and you'll find that over time the flavor profile will change. Generally, the first brew you'll tend to really emphasize the aroma. The aroma will really come out fully, and the second and subsequent brews will emphasize the flavor notes. So you also see a deeper change in the color as well. So I think we're close to 40 seconds or 50 seconds on this one. So you can see this is the second brew. It's a bit more golden color, a little bit heavier, darker. This was our first brew tea, a little bit lighter. So as we go through the multiple infusions, we're going to see this tea take on a bit more of an orangey yellow color, so it'll get deeper and darker as we go along. Dongding is a fairly robust tea because of its roasting, so I'm sure that we'll get the full flavor in the second brew. Okay, it's definitely more robust. I'm tasting more of the nutty roasted notes in the tea. Roasted barley's coming out, a bit more of the sweetness. And the other thing that is a key characteristic for dongding is a characteristic known as hui gan. It's kind of hard to translate into English, but it's kind of a lingering sweetness that you feel in the back of your throat. It's a mouth-watering feeling, and I'm definitely getting that hui gan, literally returning sweetness in this tea. So that's a key characteristic of the dongding that you should look for when you're trying your dongding. Okay, so we can continue to brew this tea up till 10 times, but I think we'll all get tea drunk that way. So I'm going to stop here. Let me show you a little bit of how the leaves have opened up. So this is what we started with. We started with just a tablespoon of tightly rolled leaves. And I have from a previous brew, this is what we ended up with. So 1 tablespoon of dry leaf literally expands to almost a full gaiwan size of loose wet leaf. So you can see how the leaves really change and the volume increases over time. Okay, so let's see if we have any questions today. Just check with our assistant here. Okay, I don't see any questions, but if you have questions, feel free to post them in the comments and I'll get to them later on. This video will be posted again on Facebook, so check us out there. If you like this video, you've learned something today, feel free to share it with your friends, your family, give us a like on Facebook. And thank you so much for tuning in today. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday, our last virtual tea tasting for June. where we'll be covering China's white peony tea, which is a famous white tea. So thanks again, everyone, and see you next week. Bye-bye.